Kent County, of course, played a big role in the November 3rd election. NBC News was in the county for a year. They were embedded talking with voters leading up to Election Day. Earlier this afternoon, I caught up with NBC News political director Chuck Todd about what they uncovered. Well, Chuck, it was fascinating to watch your team at NBC News cover our community here in Kent County, kind of from the outside in. You embedded for a year here. So let's do a little post-mortem. Remind us again why Kent County was seen as a community to watch in this election cycle.
Well, look, it was, and as you know, we picked 5 counties in 5 of the battleground states that we also viewed as representative counties. You know, we could have picked a different county in a different state that was very similar to Kent County. And so what we were looking at Kent County is that here's one of these sort of smaller suburban communities, sort of mid-sized suburban communities that we've seen this shift. We've seen this shift in the big suburbs, essentially from Republicans to the Democrats. And you were starting to see it a little bit in 2016, a little bit more in 2018. And we thought, well, what better way to understand Michigan this year? If Michigan, you know, if the Democrats find a way back to winning Michigan, it isn't going to be just through Oakland and Macomb counties, which are usually what national reporters like me end up doing. Oh, let's just go to the Detroit suburbs. And what to me made Kent County even that much more symbolic is it's the home of Gerald Ford, right? The Gerald Ford Republican, the moderate Republican. Was there still room for the moderate Republican in the Trump coalition? So to me, it was a way to look at that, both of those issues, sort of specifically the symbolic home of the moderate Republican, Grand Rapids, Kent County. Where were they going to go in this election? And this suburban shift, was this going to be as big in sort of mid-sized cities like Grand Rapids as it was in the big cities that we saw during 2018, Houston, Atlanta, et cetera? And I think that frankly, when you tell the story of Michigan, you have to, it's pretty clear to me Biden's victory did go through Kent County.
Chuck, as part of that series, you did highlight the shift as you talk it, and one of those shifts was suburban women away from Donald Trump, along with some other trends in Kent County. Did some of those predictions hold, or were there any surprises?
Well, look, I think that what we saw is there is still a split ticket voter that existed, and we saw some examples of this throughout the country. 4 years ago, there was a none of the above vote. And that none of the above vote, for instance, in Kent County, is what I think allowed the president to carry it, but he didn't carry it. Memory serves by, he didn't get 50% of the vote. And what I think is interesting and what is a reminder that the suburbs are not blue, the suburbs are purple, meaning they're still competitive, is a lot of those none of the above voters from 2016 made the decision to vote Biden and then Republican down the ballot. These are voters that don't want to see one party control everything. We had studied them very carefully, preparing for 2020. And the none of the above voters from 2016, right, who didn't like either Clinton or Trump, these were people that didn't trust either political party with full control of power. And I think that there is still a slice of that voter that exists there. I think that there was a lot of Democratic happy talk that somehow this was going to be a clean sweep, that the suburbs had turned Democratic. No, the suburbs had turned against Donald Trump, but not necessarily against set right-leaning policies. And I think that, to me, is the big lesson that all of Washington ought to take away from when they think about governing next year.
That's a great point. Absolutely. Okay, as for the election now and the aftermath, are we about to see one of the strangest inaugurations in January in U.S. history here?
Well, let's take Donald Trump aside. Just the pandemic makes it strange, right? We're not going to have the same crowd sizes that you would expect and all of that. But then throw in the wild card that is Donald Trump. You know, I'm not going to sit here. I don't think we have any idea how Trump's going to behave during this transition. We've seen now. I do think in the next week you'll start to see the official transition kick in when the Georgia recount is over and it becomes even clearer that there is no path for President Trump to overturn this election. And then the question is, what does he do? Does he go to, I know his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, thinks he's going to go to Mar-a-Lago for Thanksgiving and never come back. And he sort of finish his term out in Florida. I think there is, here's one thing I've taken away and learned from covering Donald Trump. Don't be surprised by anything that he does. It's just as possible that he suddenly decides in the last 2 weeks before he's done being president that he wants a piece of the attention that Joe Biden's getting, and maybe he'll suddenly say, I want to meet with Joe Biden and tell him what I've learned. Nothing. I would rule out nothing when it comes to what path Donald Trump picks between now and January 20th.
That's the safe bet. Chuck, Todd, thank you so much for your time. And you can watch Chuck every Sunday morning right here on Wood TV 8. His guests this weekend are Ron Klain, President-elect Biden's new chief of staff, plus Dr. Michael Osterholm, an epidemiologist and a member of Biden's COVID-19 advisory board. That's Meet the Press this Sunday at 9.